Um, Hi everyone, my name is Ella, and I attended Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon between 2015 and 2019. And I thought that I would share my experience at Lewis and Clark because, I don't know, maybe it would be helpful for prospective students, or I don't know, but also because it's just something that I've promised myself to get off my chest, and it's something that has been weighing on me for the last 3 years. And I want to start by apologizing to my friends and family who have to hear about this for the first time now. But it's just hard to look your family and friends in the eye and tell them what happened to you, because you don't want them to look at you in a certain way. You don't want them to worry about you. So basically, I'm gonna try to keep it as brief as possible. So during my sophomore year of college, so 2016 and 2017, I was assaulted a few times, and I don't really want to go into the details of that. And I was kind of an idiot, and I don't know, but I ended up dating the person who did all of these shitty things to me. And I don't know, I told myself things like, maybe I'm so hot that he just can't control himself, or maybe if we dated and it worked out, then it would somehow negate the shitty things that happened between us. And so that was really shitty, but it's not really what this video is about, actually. So it's more about the events that followed after all of this happened. So all of these assaults happened late 2016, and then I dated this person into the summer of 2017, and we ended up breaking up, which I took it really hard. It was the first boyfriend I had that I cared about, and it was a shitty feeling. I don't know. And we broke up, and then this was in beginning of August. So a few weeks after the breakup, we were going back to school, and I was catching up with one of our mutual friends, and I told her that we broke up, and she was shocked. She thought that we were a good couple. She didn't really understand what happened, and then I expressed to her that I thought that the breakup was actually a good thing because of all of these shitty things that happened in the past. And after I spoke to her, we agreed that maybe we should seek some help from we decided to go speak to she would go speak to one of our friends who was an RA. So he was a mandated reporter. So we knew this. We knew that if we spoke to him, then it would get reported, but we didn't think it would go quite as far as it did. And we also ended up speaking to our coach. And when I spoke to my coach, my intention was for him to help me create a space on our team where I could be comfortable. Because we were on the same sports team, and I didn't want him or me to have to give up athletics because of this. But of course, he was a mandated reporter too. So not long after this, I was contacted by the school to verify what happened. And then I went to speak to the provost office, to Jane Atkinson, and told her what happened. She was very understanding, and she said, here are your options. You can sign this piece of paper and then we'll move forward with an investigation. And she pretty actively discouraged me from signing it, because she told me that it would be extremely hard for me to go through with it. But I was extremely naive, and I thought that if you're telling the truth, then there's no way that you can lose, you know? And so I was wrestling with myself for a while, whether I should sign the papers or not. And then I got a phone call from the guy, because I started reaching out to some of my friends that I knew that they were either present, or I have expressed to them some of what happened between me and my boyfriend at the time. So I was trying to kind of reach out and see if, you know, they would have my back. So the news quickly made it to my ex, that I was planning on reporting him. And he called me and pretty much threatened me, and told me that nobody would believe me, that I was crazy, that I was making all of this up, and tried to completely gaslight me. And then it didn't work. You know, I was firm. And after this phone call, when he was like pretending to want to smooth things over, but in reality was threatening me, that was like the breaking point for me. And that's where I decided, you know, I'm gonna sign the papers and I'm gonna go through with it. Up until then, I had a great experience at Lewis and Clark College. I really felt supported with my mental health issues and financial issues. You know, people were really helpful. So I was actually, I went into this whole Title IX case with a positive expectation. But of course, I wouldn't be making this video if it was a happy ending. So, okay. So I went into the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities, and the guy who was the head of Student Rights and Responsibilities at the time, his name was Charlie Enquist, something like that. And him and I already didn't have a good history, because he had caught me drinking when I was underage and decided to phone my parents, even though he didn't have the right to, because I was over 18. And he called my parents in the middle of the night. My father had a panic attack because he thought I was dead. I mean, he doesn't speak English, so... And this random person called him in the middle of the night, and all he could understand was my name. And he thought that maybe I died. So... I knew that dealing with Charlie was not going to be easy, but he's supposed to be impartial. So I figured, okay, we have this past history of not, you know, necessarily liking each other, but it's his job to protect the students. So I was like, okay, let's do this. And then I got assigned like 2, I guess, investigators. It's not, you know, a criminal court case, but for the sake of, I guess, to better understand it, I might use like criminal justice terms, but just to clarify that this is not, you know, a court case. This was an internal case within Lewis and Clark College, a Title IX case. And so I was assigned 2 investigators. I believe they were both basketball coaches. They were fine. I didn't actually interact with them much. And so I went with my friend. She came with me. And I had to give an official statement that they recorded. And so I told them everything. I think I reported a few incidents, maybe like 4 or something. To be honest, these are like memories I'm trying actively really hard to erase. So even though I have all of the papers and the reports, I don't think I want to look this up. But in my mind, there's still just 2 incidents that that's like irrefutably rape. So even though I accused him with like I guess 4-ish incidents, I knew in my heart that there were only really two that I could prove. And also, so before the case started, before they recorded my statement or anything, they gave me a sheet that had the outline of how a Title IX case looks like. Okay, we have 2 weeks to talk to the respondents, so like the person accused versus the accuser, so me. Okay, then you have like this much time to appeal, this much time to provide witnesses, this is when the hearing will be. And so this was like late September, and they told me that the case should only take about a month and a half. So I was like, okay, great. So I felt like it was kind of something I agreed to, that it would be done in a month and a half. But it actually didn't conclude until March or April the next year. And I was also told that character witnesses are not admissible. I cannot comment on his character. I cannot say, oh, he was this kind of a person and therefore he would do this. I would have to provide, people who were physically there that I directly told something. So it couldn't have been anyone that would just know this as a rumor or hearsay, right? Like, obviously, otherwise, anyone could be convicted of anything if hearsay would be admissible. But so these were the rules that I was told, and I agreed to them. And so in my statement, I told them everything that happened, and I did not comment on his character. In fact, I said that once we started dating, he never hurt me. I felt like doing his best, just like I was. Maybe he had a similar idea, maybe that somehow we could fix things, but of course, there's no fixing things like this. And yes, gave my statement, and I read back the report later, and I saw that the people who wrote the report were commenting on my body language to try to determine whether I was telling the truth or not. They were saying like, oh, she appeared to be crying, or oh, she was fiddling with her fingers, which I thought was odd because I felt like that's almost like a character statement about me, right? Like how I handle my emotions and how I handle my trauma. So yeah. Fuck. Okay, this video is getting long, I'm sorry. The point is that I decided to do this on my own. I had no support. I didn't tell my parents. Most of my friends didn't know. But as I said, I figured, I'm telling the truth. There's no way that this could go any other way than my way. And when people told me that I was crazy to do this, or when they told me that he would never be found responsible, he would never get a punishment, I scoffed at them. I was like, of course, come on, like, it's the truth, he did this, like, how could he not get punished? But what happened was that he was from a extremely, extremely rich family, and obviously they hired a lawyer. And by the way, the only winner in this case was the lawyer, because she or he made a ton of money, even though I'm pretty sure they knew they would lose the case. So my friends started getting harassed by this lawyer person. I was hearing about it, you know, I mean, they're my friends, of course, they would be telling me. And I was extremely upset. Then as the case progressed, I realized that they were using my private information against me. For example, Instagram posts. They were pretty much using my Instagram posts to show that I actually wasn't depressed because I was posting about positive things and that I was actually enjoying my life. So I'm pretending that this whole case is real because actually I'm having a great time, which was not true. I mean, come on, it's Instagram. Of course, you're gonna only post positive things. Nobody posts on Instagram about being raped. Like, I don't really understand this logic, but I felt very unsafe and intruded upon. And my dorm room at the time couldn't be locked. And I had told Charlie that this was an issue that I would like to be able to lock my door. And yeah, he didn't really care about that either. So, so as I said, okay, so during this time when I was reporting him and talking to the school, he was studying abroad, so thankfully we weren't in the same physical space. And also because of this, I had decided that I was going to leave the United States for the next semester because he was going to come back and that was going to be his last semester. So I figured the best thing I could do is just get out of there until he graduates. And I think that was a good decision. And fuck, I'm sorry. Yeah, so as I said, I reported this like middle to late, I think when I signed the papers was like late September. And they couldn't actually get a hold of him until early December, and they did not interview him until January. So the whole case that was only supposed to take a month and a half was already taking way longer. And, you know, he was not cooperating at all. And but of course once he got back to the school the next semester, they did talk to him. He of course denied everything. When they confronted him with specific instances that I had described, he said that he didn't remember, that this never happened, he would never say that, he would never do that. And that's when I started gaslighting myself and doubting myself that maybe, you know, maybe, I don't know, that maybe I am crazy or something, you know? But thankfully I had friends who kept me grounded. So anyway, I was fighting this Title IX case by myself against this guy who has a lawyer. And there was me, you know, with no help. Because the Student Rights and Responsibilities Office never offered me any help. And I only found out through like a friend or a professor that actually I did have a right to counsel from a volunteer, like a professor or a staff member could volunteer and help you through your Title IX case. And that's how I got connected to one of the professors at Lewis and Clark, who has been amazing, and I could not have done it without her. And I'm really thankful for her, especially because I didn't have my family behind me. I mean, I was in such a bad mental state that I was seeing my therapist 3 times a week just to be able to function. The school mandated me to only take 12 credits so that I wouldn't be overwhelmed. So anyway, I did all of the paperwork for the case, but Kimberly would look through it, you know, make sure that I didn't say anything that wasn't in the policy or wasn't true, or even my grammar, you know, I mean, I'm not a native speaker, so I thought it wouldn't be a bad idea to check my grammar. So anyway, the case took a really long time, and Charlie, who's the head of student rights and responsibilities, kept on granting him and his lawyer extensions. So instead of a week, they would have 2 weeks to come, to get all their witnesses. Instead of, once we got to the appeal stage, instead of a week, they would have 2 weeks to get the appeals in, which I thought was really unfair. I mean, you had told me 1 week, like that's what we agreed to in the beginning, and now you are backtracking because you're afraid of this lawyer. Like, I felt so abandoned just for the reason of not having money to have a lawyer. So, as I said, there were 2 major rules of the case, since it's not a court case. One was you're not allowed character witnesses, and the other one was that you can only speak for yourself. You technically weren't allowed to have someone represent you. You were allowed counsel, but they couldn't represent you. And so his witnesses that he provided included my ex-boyfriend before him, his mother that I met twice in my life, and his friends and housemates that I kind of knew but weren't really friends with, and obviously they were all character witnesses. And there was one ear witness who was present at one of these instances of an assault, and their statement was that she sounded like she was enjoying it. And I couldn't do anything to fight this, even though I knew they didn't allow character witnesses. I couldn't fight them, not them. Okay, I couldn't fight them being included or not. I didn't have the mental power or the time. I was still trying to study and graduate. And so not only did he provide only character witnesses, but his lawyer also managed to knock out a lot of my witness statements. For example, there was a statement that one of my friends made about the sports team that we were in as a whole. And as he's part of the sports team, it was a statement that applies to all of them. But the lawyer argued that you cannot, a general statement about a group cannot be admissible into this case, even if it includes that person, when you make the statement about the group. I don't want to go into details because I don't want to expose the people who were involved. That's not my intention. The only people I want to expose are the institution of Lewis and Clark College. So yeah, and actually the witnesses that they ended up interviewing at the final hearing were all his witnesses. They didn't interview any of mine. Well, there was one person who was a witness for both of us, so they interviewed her. But I actually didn't go to the hearing. I had already been living in Amsterdam for that semester, or actually didn't know if I would return. And I was in a terrible mental state. This case was ruining me. I was on so many medication. I didn't have a clear mind ever. People that have taken Seroquel will know that it fucks you up. And I didn't have any support besides my therapist and some of my friends and the professor who was helping me. And so I didn't show up to the hearing, but I did write a statement. You had the option to give a final statement to make your case. And I gave it to the professor who was helping me, and she read it out loud without any emotion. That was the deal, because of course you cannot have somebody else speak for you in the case. So, but reading a statement that someone else wrote is not speaking for the other person. But of course, when it came to the appeal period, his lawyer was saying that, in fact, I broke the rule because I had someone else speak for me. And I appealed back that I thought that was ridiculous because all of the paperwork they submitted and all of the statements they made were very eloquent, referred to Lewis and Clark policy by the number, this law, that law. So it was extremely obvious that his lawyer was writing all of this and not him. So I felt like he was the one that had someone else speak for him. Even though he's reading it out, even though he's sending this information from his email address, he's not the person acquiring this information. So, anyway, there was like a committee, like a jury, I guess, at the hearing. I think maybe 3 or 4 people who were like professors, staff members from Lewis and Clark. And they had found him responsible for, I think, 2 occasions. I think the 2 worst ones, the 2 that I could prove the most, or the best. And I felt satisfied. Of course, then came the appeals, which took another extra 2 weeks. And through this whole process, I felt extremely let down by Lewis and Clark, extremely let down by the people who were handling my case. It wasn't until the case made it to the dean that I felt like somebody was finally listening, because the dean thankfully denied the appeals that he made. And that was the first time that I felt like somebody cared. And so at that point, my goal was to get him maximum punishment. I mean, you did do these things, so I don't think that a person like that, if you cannot graduate for plagiarism, that I don't think you should be able to graduate for rape. But I knew that was a tall order to have someone barred from graduating. But I was still hoping for not a fit punishment, but something that I could be satisfied with. So his punishment was that he could no longer represent us in our sports team, which was ridiculous because our coach knew about what happened and he still allowed him to be on the team when he had the power not to do that. And so I felt really let down by the crew coach as well. His name is Sam Taylor. But I have to say that the crew team themselves were great, and a lot of them supported me, and especially the women's team. And I'm really grateful that I had people stand up for me when I felt like nobody was. And another punishment that he had was that he had to write an essay about what consent is, because I guess during the case they figured out that maybe he wasn't intending to hurt me, but that he didn't understand what consent was. Like, that was kind of their conclusion, which I think is ridiculous because you begin college freshman year with a course all about consent. Like, which I also referred to in the case. I was like, well, we have all been told what consent is freshman year, so to say, like, for him to say, oh, I don't know what consent is not a valid argument, in my opinion. I'm sorry. My stomach has been, like, crazy bad recently. So, and the final thing that they did for us was they had a no contact order, so we were not allowed to contact each other. And an extension of that rule was that if we happened to be in the same space somewhere, then he had to leave. Like, I could remain in that space, but he would have to leave, you know? He would have to, like, I would have, like, priority to spaces at school. And I didn't really worry about this because by the time I went back to Lewis and Clark College the next year, he had graduated. I knew he stayed in Portland, but I wasn't too worried about running into him. But I did. There was an event where we did run into each other. And I, of course, freaked out. I thought I was going to pee myself. But thankfully, I have an amazing best friend who politely asked him to please leave. And he said, "I'm sorry, I didn't know she was here. I will leave." And he did. But 5 minutes later, he came back in. So he clearly didn't respect me at all, even then, even after everything that happened. He still didn't care. You know, it really sucks. Because all the times he hurt me physically, I have mostly processed in myself, as I expressed during the Thailand case. I have a history of abuse, so I felt like I could make peace with that within myself. But I haven't found it in me to forgive him for how he treated me during the case, for sending a lawyer after me, for lying about me. I mean, I read the statement that his mother gave, and I realized that he's lying to his own mother, so he has no conscience, he has no soul. So after that, I wasn't expecting anything. And yeah, so pretty much what I want to say is that Lewis and Clark College ruined my life. I cannot function. I am extremely depressed and suicidal. I can't hold down a job. I cannot progress through my graduate studies. I cannot date anyone. I cannot have sex with anyone. And this secret that I have has created this rift within my family. So I made this video. Just in case you're a prospective student. Then maybe if you decide to attend Lewis and Clark College, then maybe you should think twice about it if you are a woman, if you are not American, and if you don't have money. Because unfortunately these things happen to not just me, these happen to a lot of people, and you know, I mean, women and men alike. But actually other Thailand cases that I heard of, the aggressor was kicked out of the college every single time. So I think it's obvious that the difference was the lawyer and the money between those cases and mine. And so before I leave, I want to just say that my problem is with the Student Rights and Responsibilities Office, particularly with Charlie, the Provost Office, and I guess, you know, the crew team. And I would like to say that while, of course, these things were horrible, I also received a lot of support from Lewis and Clark College, the math department, the biochemistry department. Most of my professors actually were very understanding. The international office, they were amazing. And I'm really thankful for them. And finally, the Student Alumni Association were also great. They gave me the time off that I needed and supported me. And so I don't want to say that it's all bad. I'm just saying that if you are thinking about attending, that you should really think twice. And I guess this video has been long. Fuck, that's disgusting. I don't know how to edit videos, so that will stay. But yeah, thank you for listening, and I would appreciate if this video would exist in its own space, and that I could view this as something that I got off my chest. So I would appreciate if you just didn't mention this video to me. Thank you. Good luck with your life, and I wish all the best to you.